Welcome to Athens City Council. This evening, we will be meeting in council committees. The meeting will be called to order by the City Council President, who will then pass discussion over to a respective committee. The chair of the committee will introduce the discussion topics and provide an overview of the issues at hand. If needed, members of the administration will offer brief statements to provide further context. We will then welcome input from the community. Any citizens who wish to speak will be asked to state their name and address, both verbally and on the sign and sheet located at the podium. Individuals will be given one opportunity to share their thoughts, and the committee chair will have the authority to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Once all citizens have had the opportunity to speak within the 15-minute time period allotted for total public participation on each topic, the public comment portion will be closed. Council committee members will then continue their deliberations. There may be additional questions directed to the administration during this time. When the discussion on the topic concludes, the chair will indicate whether legislation will be introduced at the next regular session of council and move on to the next item on the agenda or adjourn the committee if their work is complete. The next committee chair will then call their committee to order, proceeding in the same manner as before. Once all committees have adjourned, City Council will conclude for the evening.
Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, December 16th, 2024 at 7:02 p.m. Tonight we have one committee meeting and then we will be going into a regular session. I'm going to ask council members all to stay up at the dais as we have one item under the Finance and Personnel Committee. Member Reisner?
Thank you, Mr. President. This was a correction to the budget that we passed previously due to an oversight. Let me give you an explanation that's come from the law director's office. It reads, in order to attract a new attorney and retain the attorneys currently in office, the city amended the staffing ordinance to move the prosecutor's position from pay band 9 to pay band 10. The city also amended the staffing ordinance to remove the position of chief city prosecutor in pay band 11 and inserted the new position of assistant law director to pay band 11. The additional compensation request is to compensate both attorneys for assuming additional duties from the reorganization of the office. This is from our law director, Lisa Eliason. So that is the reason why we're meeting in council to discuss this, and then from committee, it will be introduced as a first reading.
Thank you, Member Reisner.
I have no further comments if anyone has any questions. Member Clotfelder.
I'm sure this is a really smart reorganization because I have great faith in the law director, but do we know how much more it's going to cost the city in total? Did I miss a dollar amount?
No, you didn't.
It's in the...
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Member Swank.
Maybe I didn't hear. How is the search going? Have we offered or about to offer? Or I know 6 weeks ago we had no applicants.
Right, that's correct, we didn't, and I had advertised the position all throughout the state. And I did make an offer, and I did have a tentative acceptance of the offer, but the person is interested in what our benefits are, so can't say yes yet.
Okay, thank you.
I'm actually hopeful, more hopeful than I was a few weeks ago when we talked.
That's good.
Administration, you have anything? Okay, I see no other elected officials in the audience. Audience? Well, that concludes Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Member Reisner. We will now move on to our regular session of council. I'd like to start by acknowledging that here in Athens County, we live and work on land initially settled and developed by earlier people, particularly the Shawnee and the Osage, and those identified through cultures commonly known as the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. This acknowledgement reminds us of the importance of honoring history, people, and the planet as we work to improve our city's legacy. Our first order of business tonight is to establish quorum. 6 of 7 council members are present this evening, and we have quorum. The next item is communications. Do any council members have communications they'd like to share? I'm sorry? Okay, Member McCary?
Thank you. I'll be brief, as I know that multiple council members have been receiving inquiries about proposed income tax increase appearing on a ballot for the citizens of Athens to vote on, but that will be discussed later today, so I just want to acknowledge that those communications have been coming in.
Thank you, Member McCary. Any other communications from council members? Now, reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason?
No.
Mayor Patterson?
I just have one item to share with council this evening, and that is that the National League of Cities puts out what's called the Centennial Under 40 Impact Award, and we have someone among us who is one of the 45 individuals being recognized, and that would be Councilmember McCary. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate the honor. Thank you.
It's worth mentioning that when you look at the list of other elected officials from across the United States, Councilmember McCary is in good company because it ranges from individuals from Dallas, Texas, to Ithaca, New York, to everywhere in between, Austin, Texas. I mean, it's quite an impressive group, and so I just want to go on the record as having acknowledged that. And one other thing I do want to say that pertains to NLC, I mentioned this last week, but I just came back from the executive committee meeting for the National League of Cities, and it is official that I am now the president of the National League of Cities, representing 19,500 cities, towns, and villages across the United States.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, and congratulations again, and Member McCary, congratulations. We will now move on to ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 112-24 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to provide financial support from the city's transient guest tax for the operation of the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, ORCA, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to adopt 112-24.
Second.
Of all the ordinances that was introduced this year, this has been the one that has carried on the longest. It's been talked about the most. It's been up and down, right, left, and center. I just want to read a little bit of Section 1 because it is pertinent to what we're doing. The mayor is hereby authorized to enter into an agreement to provide financial support from the city's transient guest tax paid into the general fund to the Outdoor Recreational Council of Appalachia, ORCA, a regional council of governments, COG, for the operation of ORCA, provided that the proceeds of such tax are sufficient, legally available, and lawfully appropriated for the purpose, and the city's general fund reserve balance is 8% or higher for the year 2024. Therefore, the reserve balance shall be 9% or higher. A copy of said agreement is attached hereto and incorporated herein. I received a email from the auditor who couldn't make it tonight saying that our fund reserve balance at the moment is at around 6.8, 6.9. Given the conditions within Section 1, even if we pass the ordinance tonight, she will not authorize payment until the reserve gets to where it's supposed to be. So the ordinance will be there if and when our cash reserve balance goes up.
Thank you, Member Reisner. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from council members? Elected officials, Law Director Eliason, Mayor Patterson, please.
I do have an update for council. The Orca board met earlier today, and one of the topics of conversation was the removal of a Orca member for non-payment. So I think that that's pertinent to this conversation, to this particular ordinance. And it was voted upon to where one of the Orca members, as you all are aware, Orca is a council of governments, so one of the governments was removed as a member / voting member for Orca.
Thank you. Yes, Member Swank.
Mr. Mayor, does that also remove their attendance at meetings?
It does, however, what Orca is working through, in full disclosure to council, is the ability for that member to now become a basically an affiliate, but not necessarily gaining them access to the resources that Orca can bring to bear with recreational assets.
Okay, thank you.
Member Spionis.
So if we pass this, but we can't pay it right away, how quickly could we be ousted, so to speak? Or is this,
We just met today. The Orca board will meet again in January.
Member Swank.
If I read the bylaws correctly, I believe there is a clause, in fact, I'm almost certain there's a clause in there that if we can't pay it by the date, we can indicate when we expect to pay it. And I think this ordinance speaks to that. I'd have to go back and review, because I know there were several versions of the bylaws, but the last one I remember reading did leave that in there, full faith and intent to pay.
That's correct.
Any other comment? Yes, Member McCary.
Yeah, I think given the pertinence of citizens' concerns about our budget, particularly the proposed income tax increase, I think it's relevant to invite some commentary on this being a priority that benefits us economically, which can ultimately help us. But with the mayor here, I thought it would be appropriate for him to just comment on this being an appropriate investment despite financial concerns.
You know, there's not a firm metric out there in terms of heads and beds in our hotel spaces, but I do know anecdotally that people who do come to ride in the Bailey Trail system who are venturing from outside of the state, they are spending the night in hotels. Where those hotels are, I don't know. There's no way to actually to identify that unless a hotel were to sit there and create some kind of questionnaire, which would be odd. You know, why would they care while someone's here? But to your point, you know, there's indicators. There's also indicators throughout the county. There's interest in taking the former Chansey Elementary School, which has been purchased, and turning it into an eating establishment and a microbrewery in the future, and that's underway. I will say, and if council will grant me just a moment to digress just a little bit, but it's relevant.
May I just make a correction real quick? Not the elementary school, but the old high school.
Thank you.
Is the brewery and the
old high
restaurant.
school.
I was
The
about
old
ready to call
Sunbed.
Tom. Yes, she's out of the office.
With K through 12.
It's all right.
Thank you, Councilman, or President Crowell. My digression is that I would contend that while going on to bigger and better things, the village of Chansey has lost an amazing mayor, and will lose Mayor Renner as of December 31st of this year, to where she's taking a role at RCAP, which I don't remember exactly what RCAP stands for. It's Rural Communities something. I can get it to council, but it's basically working out of Washington D.C. to continue to promote villages and smaller municipalities. I'm stating all that because it quite honestly breaks my heart that we're losing Mayor Renner, because she has done so much for the village of Chansey. I would go so far as to say, Councilmember McCary, that a lot of that is because of the trailhead that is the Bailey's Trail system right there in Chansey. The same holds true for the Doneville trailhead, which is in an unincorporated area of what used to be Imperial and Doneville. we just received word that ODOT is willing to work with Buchtel to allow for use of part of 78 right-of-way to put a connector that will get to Snow Fork and be able to create that trailhead. So, and Buchtel has seen improvements already within the village of Doneville. And so direct impacts to the city of Athens, I would contend that we have people who are coming here to ride in that system that they're frequenting our restaurants, our microbreweries, our hotels, the grocery store if they're camping somewhere nearby because they're going to need groceries. So we are benefiting. It's just difficult to put an actual stamp on that and say, here's the dollar amount that you're seeing in improvements. But you know, you look around and it's happening. Again, it was great listening to Mayor Renner this afternoon, and Mayor Renner herself was talking about the improvements that they are seeing that are real improvements in Chansey itself. I would contend a lot of that has to do with Mayor Renner, but also a lot has to do with what a 88-mile mountain bike trail, purpose-built, all skill levels can do to any community. And in particular, in a U.S. national forest, which we may not ever see again because of constraints within the U.S. Forest Service, USDA Forest Service. So I'll get off my soapbox. I believe we are absolutely seeing improvements and economic impacts in the city of Athens. It's anecdotal at this point in time. Councilman Carey.
Thank you for that response, and I would just conclude my question with the observation that recreation and tourism was, according to our citizens who provided input into the economic development and entrepreneurship and technology section of our Athens 2040 comprehensive plan, that was the second top investment area after renewable energy. So this is consistent with our prioritizations in Athens 2040.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 128-24 is an ordinance to provide for an increase in the general city income tax of 0.30%, 0.30%, per annum beginning January 1, 2026, authorizing the question of the increase to be placed on the ballot at the next primary election to be held on May 6th, 2025, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 128-24.
Second.
You can read through the entire ordinance as written, but the opening paragraph here, title, pretty much says it all. I believe that this question should be put before the voters. The citizens of Athens can decide whether or not they wish to be taxed or not. Not up to council to tax, it's up to the voters.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from council members? Member Smike.
Thank you, President Corral. While it may not be up to council to tax, it is up to council to say we need a tax. By passing this tonight, we are affirming that affirmative vote that we indeed do need the money. I was at a rather large annual Christmas party Saturday night, and I really didn't expect to have to hand out business cards, but if I talked to one person, I talked to 2 dozen. And Member McCary was there also when he found out he won that award. Congratulations again. Thanks. And if there was a topic that people wanted to talk about, in fact, there were 2 topics that people wanted to talk about. The one we are discussing right now and the theft of the $722,000. But we're talking about the income tax now. And if we vote in the affirmative on this, we are saying to the public of Athens, yes, it is your choice, it is your vote. but by putting it on, we feel it's necessary. I received an interesting email today, and I think all of council may have, from a local business owner out on East State Street. And she brought up a very, very interesting point. We live in a town where maybe the majority of people, at least the majority of income, is derived from people who work in the public sector. Ohio University, Athens City Schools, the City of Athens government. And as such, those people are generally guaranteed an annual increase in their income. But many people, I see a few in the audience tonight, work in the private sector, and they are not guaranteed an annual increase in their income. Some of them actually have to, and I have experience in this, my years in the yearbook industry, actually have to ask for one, have to demonstrate metrics, performance, accountability before they get that increase. And a lot of people just don't get an increase. We hear of people being stuck at a place for years and years and years. Yet if we put this on the ballot and the citizens vote for it, those people are actually going to see a decrease in their pay. We've been looking at a lot of numbers, and I thank everybody. The auditor and the treasurer aren't here, Mayor with and our Director Stone. We have charts and all of that. And quite honestly, I don't see the need at this point in time, or at least the need for a 0.3% increase. Year to date, our income tax increases are running $532,000 ahead of the estimate for the year, with another month to go, which if we continue at this pace, we will have raised in income taxes $581,329 more than the estimate. We're doing a real good job with our expenses. In fact, we're going to be reducing some of the appropriations this evening. Year to date, our general fund stands at our general fund projected carryover stands at $4,813,670, which is very much in line with the carryover we've had every year since 2020. Our carryover looks good. And our carryover, when combined with our projected revenue for 2025, will be $21.1 million. Our projected budget in the general fund is $19,900,000. So about $1.3 million to the good. But I think it's going to be more than that. And why do I think that? I think our income is increasing. New businesses either just opened or coming to town include Starbucks, Chipotle, the Lostro complex, and hopefully money we derive from space that we rent in the Armory. I expect some businesses to have a return to pre-Union Street construction income. There's a long-time business on Union Street whose sales this year are down $850,000. Now that street's almost 100% open and accessible, I expect those sales to go up, and with those sales, the need for people to work, and with people working, more income tax. We have some proposals on the table for new apartments, perhaps on Pomeroy Road, perhaps on Hooper Street. New homes, townhouses going up in University Estates. The people that move into those houses have to come from somewhere. If they come from outside the city and are not currently working in the city, with them comes increased income tax revenue. And finally, and Director Stone shared this with us, OU's policy to have their senior administrators on campus as much as possible could be a tremendous boost to our income tax. In 2019, there were 538 OU employees who made $100,000 a year or more. Why do I remember that number? The same number of electoral votes. Those are high income earners. And with those people now on campus 5 days a week or 4 days a week, as opposed to working from Florida, we will see an increase in revenue there. But here's what I'd really like to see. School districts by state law are required to publish a 5-year forecast twice a year. I would love to see a forecast for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, with one line showing our projected revenue and the other showing our projected expenses. Right now, they're traveling like this. The charts we got from various entities in the city show them parallel. I'd like to see if those continue in that path, if they widen, or if they cross. Because if they cross, that's where we're in trouble. And that's where I can justify to the public that we need an income tax. Just today, in the Columbus Dispatch on page A3, Marysville School District, quote from their treasurer, during a November presentation, this is from the treasurer, this is from the article. During a November presentation, Treasurer Todd Johnson warned that the district could be facing a negative cash balance by 2028. I think a chart that shows that for us would be a real plus that we could go to the voters and show them. It's not a plus it's going to happen, but it's a plus in terms of information. We don't have that information yet. And one final thing. At the last meeting of the one before, Director Stone made a comment that was very, very interesting and revealing. Because of high inflation in 2022 and 2023, we negotiated raises that were a little higher, in fact, quite a bit higher percentage-wise than previous raises. What Director Stone said was the next time around, with inflation back in the 2 to 3% range, we won't be seeing those increases at that level. And one of the reasons given us today in an email received is that personnel costs are what's driving this need. I don't expect personnel costs, based on what Director Stone shared with us, to continue to escalate at the same rate they have for the last round of raises. So for those reasons, and a question the public's asking, what is it going to go for specifically? I talked about a fire station and a schoolhouse and a pool and the armory, but what is it going for specifically? I can't support this ballot initiative, and I certainly can't support it at this level. Thank you, President Crow.
Thank you, Member Swank. Other members of council? Member Spelness.
Yeah, I've been mulling over this, as I'm sure everyone else has, and going back and forth and thinking it through and looking at the numbers and whatever. And I guess I have some various thoughts about this. One is, Member Swank had some really good thoughts about it. On the other hand, we've lost, 6 businesses, if not more? Is that right? 6 businesses in the last year or so? At least 6 businesses, so that's not good. We also aren't going to be getting any more ARPA money or some of the other supports that we've had that boosted, what we have been able to spend. And in addition to personnel costs, which, I think Member Swank was right on about that, but we also have the medical expenses have gone up very much. That is one of the biggest items on there that I can see. And that was some of my concerns. So I have thought about that. And the other thing is, the loss of monies really concerns people. And I'm wondering if it makes sense to put this on a May ballot rather than on a November ballot, if we're going to pass it at all. I'm leaning towards passing it, but I don't think it's a good idea to do it in May. Too close to, first of all, we don't know what the incoming state and federal administration is going to do, and based on what they're saying, as has happened before, what's going to dribble down to the cities is probably going to be nothing. We're probably going to have to spend more, and that worries me. I think we have a right to be worried about that. So I think it's really a tough call, to be honest, and I'm just not sure what the best action to take is. And we did pass a budget already last week, so I guess we can't undo that. Anyway, so those are my thoughts about it. Happy to hear from anybody else.
Thank you, Member Spilnis. Member Thomas.
Thank you. I appreciate a lot of what Member Spielness just said. And, you know, what Member Swank had to say. There's a lot of guessing and hoping and what if. The concern I have with waiting is that we know our personnel, our medical, those things are not going to get, excuse me, less with time. If anything, they're going to increase more. We're going to have more, you know, higher costs as raises go through. We have contracts with unions that are not going to lessen in the next, you know, 2 years. I think the bigger discussion is, A, the voters should be deciding whether or not it goes up and down. And if we won't even put it on the ballot, then we're just deciding for them that we're going to make cuts, and whether they agree with it or not, they don't even get a voice. And I think the plus of doing it in May versus November is, you know, the administration has time to discuss the what and the where and the how much and the reasoning up until May. And if it does not pass, then we can look at things after that, and we have more of the year. If we get to November and it doesn't pass, you know, by mid-26 is when we'll start to see the cuts or any decisions that need to be changed. I think it's, you know, for Athens expects a lot. You know, we are providing for the greater Athens area, not just the citizens that live in Athens. So things like our pool, you know, our community center, the arts, the recreation, you know, the people that, you know, we want to see increases in our code office, we want to see added sidewalks. I don't see those demands and those wants to keep creating our city, you know, to make it what we like, getting less. You know, and we can cut personnel and you can do things, but, you know, if you keep increasing, you know, your expenses keep going up, if your revenue isn't keeping somewhat of a pace like we do with our water and sewer, where we're keeping a little above where we need to be and our head above the water, and your expenses start outpacing, you're not going to catch up from that. And you can cut, you know, we all got the email, you can cut $340,000 from the budget or from the next year and save it. But then the next year, your expenses are going to go up, and you're going to have to cut another $300,000 or more, and it's going to keep meeting cuts till you're down to your bare minimum. That's just how finances work. I have concerns with putting it off. You know, we talk about deferred maintenance on campus that we've seen. What's going to happen with some of our buildings and things if we defer on sidewalks, if we defer on things that we want to see, you know, upgrading, you know, crosswalks in the street. All of those things, the money comes from somewhere. I don't think it's something we take lightly. I think we've seen, you know, it is a 15% increase, but I think when you throw out 15% as a percentage with no real numbers attached, it sounds a lot different. You know, we're looking at increases of, you know, if you make $40,000, it's $120 a year of an increase, $2.30 a week. If you make $70,000, $210 a year. You know, and I've got, you know, the whole spreadsheet that goes up. We're not talking a huge, you know, it's huge depending on where you are in life. I think I'm very well aware of that. I think most of us are. But I think the 15% is somewhat confusing, being thrown out there as if we are jumping to a 15% tax increase. I'm also willing to vote to put this on the ballot right now because we've gotten some emails, but we've gotten 3 emails on the third reading after 6 weeks of discussion and a week of committee before that. It's been in the newspapers. It's, you know, and I've not seen a lot of people upset or bothered or concerned. And I'm sure because we all do the same thing as people. We see it and then we start reacting to it, but that gives us up until May to discuss it. We're not just voting to put this increase and it exists. We're putting to give it to the voters to discuss and to decide and to vote. You know, I have a lot of other notes, but I just get concerned, and I think it's fiscally responsible to be planning 18 months, 2 years in advance. You know, you can't get that far behind in bills and expenses before it really comes back badly. Yeah, I think that's really all I have, general thoughts I have.
Thank you, Member Thomas. Member McCary.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments, and most recently from Member Thomas, I thought it would be helpful to kind of outline what kind of public input there is if we were to pass this today, and it will be on the ballot up to voters in May. Are there public hearings or other specific opportunities outside of council meetings that we can already identify?
We can't, and the mayor spoke to this a couple meetings ago, we can't go out and campaign for the levy. We can have informational meetings.
Right.
And if you remember with the building of the new high school, those were held in various places around the city. But in terms of actually going out and campaigning, no, we can give information, much like we're sharing information. Difference is tonight we can also share opinions.
Thank you, and I believe the public would appreciate that. It's my perception that the mayor, the treasurer, the auditor have looked at this very closely and are in support of passing or having this appear on the ballot for citizens. And then there's also this perception that perhaps it's the role of city council to listen to the concerns of citizens and to think about how they will be financially impacted by this if it goes on to pass on the ballot. But I'm inclined to leave the decision to the voters, and it's where I'll stop my comment.
Thank you, Member McCary. Any additional council members?
I just have a question.
Yes, Member Clodfelter.
I really appreciate the comments of everybody who's spoken so far. Everybody has made really good points. I will just say that I've had a number of people come and talk to me in person who have shared concern about the size of the increase and how it's going to affect their personal finances. People who may be on not among the higher earners in town, but who are very, hardworking, good people we want in Athens. So there is concern out there. Now, I also agree that we should let the voters decide. I think it would be unfortunate if this does not get on the ballot, but there is concern out there about this.
Thank you, Member Clodfelter. Are there any other council members who have not yet spoken who would like to speak on this issue? Okay, now we may go to repeats. Member Thomas?
When we were talking about public meetings or info sessions, that would be something that obviously we could not do. That would be something that your office could do. I don't really.
Mayor? Please, Mayor.
I'm a little confused by that. I can tell you that my city staff cannot campaign or be vocal about this, but elected officials, you're elected. And so therefore, you're elected by the public. We're talking about a ballot initiative. There's no reason, Law Director, if you would like to chime in on that as well. During the recreation levy that went through in 2017 or 16 with the income tax increase that happened in 2015, 2016 timeframe, it was initiated by former Mayor Paul Weil and was on the May ballot, I believe, in 2016 and voted upon. I was campaigning for it. I was certainly talking about it. And then it's to the question about, how can this get out further to the public? If my memory serves me correctly, the city auditor and myself sat on a panel with the Athens County League of Women Voters when they hosted a forum. It may have been a candidate forum, but also one of the forum topics was the income tax increase. So to that point, if council finds this important to move forward in the next year, you got to vote on it tonight, but whatever the outcome is, council can speak to the income tax increase.
I do agree with that. The prohibition is expending city funds. So long as city funds aren't expended, then council members could speak either in favor or against.
That's up to council. But again, I need to be clear. The city staff, I can only speak for the executive branch, they're agnostic to this. They will not say anything one way or the other about the income tax increase, as they shouldn't. But me, as the mayor, absolutely.
Member Spilness?
Maybe it's too late to say this again, but, when you're saying you need a new fire station, People can see that. I get it. And when you're doing fundraising, for example, if you give people the option of saying, oh, it's going to go towards, helping this one program, people get excited about that. But just a general, we kind of need more money is a really hard sell. So, I'm kind of leaning towards, I think we do need the money, but I'm still worried about how this is going to be framed. Where we say, well, there's more money, or it's not as compelling as saying, put it towards to finish the armory or the parking garage or something, anything. I don't know, but it's a really hard sell. And the mayor's raising his hand.
I'll wait until it comes back around to me.
Other council members? Member Swank?
A couple things. Medical costs. And I may have misspoke. I was basing my comments on the most recent school levy and what I was informed by board members of the Board of Education about campaigning, so may not be applicable. So I may have misspoken, I apologize. In terms of no voice, there's a group that doesn't have a voice here, and those are the folks that live outside the city who work in the city. I know that's the way the law is written, and that's what we've got to live with, but those people will have an influence on the voters in the city who they work beside. Secondly, medical costs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're self-insured. Mm-hmm. And when we look at this chart that goes from 2008 to 2023, 2023 is a real outlier. It's up there all by itself. And sadly, we have acknowledged that that was an abnormal year and we had 3 catastrophic cases. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that'll never happen again. But it does kind of skew the numbers in terms of our medical costs. And finally, there have been a lot more than 3 emails. And I'm not going to sit here and read them, but I'm going to read a couple to put them in context. Politically speaking, when anything significant transpires around the holidays, it often gets lost in the conversations because people are focused on other issues. Alan, thank you for taking your stand on the income tax. I thank you for your stand on the proposed income tax increase with no, Member Svelna's point, with no future accountability for increased revenues. And I've got others. So yes, as a group, we may have only gotten 3, but they're pouring in and I could read off of here all day, people's comments on them.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions on the issue in front of us today? Law Director Eliason, any comments?
No.
Mayor Patterson, would you like to comment on the?
Just a couple things I think are worth mentioning. Number one, I truly appreciate Councilmember Swank, you're talking about whether we're looking at linear increases or we're looking at trends where, one's a little more exponential than the other. But I feel compelled to mention to council that if we were to sit and wait to the point where those 2 lines intersect each other when it comes to revenue and expenses, it's too late. Mm-hmm. At that point, we're playing a game of catch up to where you can never get yourself fully caught up again. And the reason I'm saying that is because you're looking at trends now, and you're looking at, some projected trends. And I just state this because I've lived through it already when we saw the income tax increase in 2016 with high hopes for what we were going to be able to put that money towards and potentially hiring new individuals to include more code enforcement officers. In 2016, my greatest regret was learning from that at that point in time to where when it did pass, and again, I believe it was May, but when it passed, you don't see that true realization of revenue coming into the city for more than a year and a half. More than a year and a half before you truly realize it. We have 2 big tranches of income tax. Now, there's individual income tax that'll come out throughout the year. It comes in monthly. It's small in comparison, but we'll see the April boost and we'll see the October boost. And even with those, you don't have a full picture of that new income tax year, which for this will be 2026. Given that, we won't see what we can really, what that revenue truly looks like until well into 2027. And I share that with you because that's exactly what we experienced in 2016. It wasn't until well into 2017 and early 2018 to where we really saw this is what the new revenue really looks like. Because of changes, Councilmember Swank, you're right that there has been some increases in businesses. I acknowledge that. I will also acknowledge the fact that these are not going to be high revenue income tax generating businesses by and large. The Lostro building will largely be operated almost as on a short-term rental platform. I've stated these when I've gone to the National League of Cities, to where I check into a facility, a building that had 40 rooms to let, whether they were 1 bedroom or 3 bedroom, whatever, that's irrelevant. But the point is, there was nobody there to greet me. It was basically a jockey box that you put in a code, and the door swings open, here's your key, you go up and use the room. So there's no FTE associated with that. That's all computer generated. There is housekeeping. But that housekeeping is only going to come in once you check out. They don't come in throughout the week because you're staying at a short-term rental. And the Lastro building is going to operate on a platform similar to that. Now, there will be commercial on the first floor. And so to that, whomever that becomes, I think we all kind of know who we think is going to be in there, but there's going to be FTEs associated with that full-time equivalents with that ground floor restaurants that go in. The other thing that I think is important for not really council to recognize, because you guys see it all the time, in terms of the income tax mix, the income tax revenue that comes in, the percentage that goes to the general fund, the percentage that goes to transit, the percentage that goes to streets, the percentage that goes to recreation. And we judiciously will shift those around with council's approval each year, not each year, but when we know that we need to. So at this point in time, those adjustments that we've made, we have stretched our current tax revenue to the point where there's not a whole lot of shifting more that we can do. Yet I get a letter like this from the assistant superintendent for the Athens City School District that came to not only myself, it came to President Crow, it came to Councilmember Micah McCary, and it's basically asking to help parents who cannot necessarily work into their schedule the time to drop their child off, nor does the school bus come to their residence to take their child to Morrison Gordon Elementary. Can Athens Public Transit make some adjustments to create a bus line that goes to out that corridor? And I would contend not only that, but possibly for Beacon School. Would I like to see something someday that goes up and down Dairy Lane to accommodate people who are in recovery and are on their feet having to walk down to Richland Avenue, as opposed to a bus loop that goes, short one, goes from Richland, goes all the way down at least to Adam Amanda Mental Health Services, and then back out again? Sure. But what we're allocating for the revenue that goes into transit right now, that's not going to happen. If I juggled all the money in the different mix around, it's still not going to happen. To your point, Councilmember Spielness, and I think these are things that would certainly come to light for everybody in a public forum, much like the League of Women Voters puts on, to speak to, I don't live in the world of threat. I don't. That's just not who I am. Because I'm not going to sit there and say, well, we're going to lose this job and this is what's going to happen if time goes on. I come from the world of letters like this. Like, what is the possible? to where can we take our only public transit system, it's ours, and continue to further subsidize it so that we can get things like cost-effective transportation to those who need it the most. If it's a child going to Morrison Gordon Elementary, or an individual who's in recovery at the Clem House, or if it's graduate students at Ohio University. And I encourage council members over the course of the next 6 months to engage with Graduate Student Senate and Student Senate and ask them, is transit an issue for you? I guarantee the graduate students, and in particular the international student body at OU who do not have a car because they can't bring it here, that they are strapped with being able to try and get to Kroger or wherever to get their groceries and then come back to wherever it is they're living. Or if they're doing research in a lab, because I've heard this as well, they're in a lab and they have to do their research late at night. How are they getting back? And they fear walking back to wherever it is they live if they have to walk it because there's no bus line working that time. That's one issue of many, many issues. But I feel compelled, because I did get this letter from Associate Superintendent Chad Springer, and it came to council as well, some council members. But that's one minor facet of everything that we're looking at right now. Street improvements. I think everyone on the dais can honestly say there have been street improvements somewhere within your ward or within your neighborhood, and some neighborhoods significant street improvements. That's one of our mixes is streets. So if I have to sit there and go, do I sit there and our 85% of our general revenue goes to paying salaries and paying insurance, healthcare. You have to sit there now and think at this point in time, not a year from now, not 2 years from now, because it's way too late at that point in time. Are people appreciating the services that we have been able to provide? And are people, I think most people do appreciate the level of law enforcement that we have right now, the level of fire protection that we have right now. But these are all things that we take into consideration if we continue to not increase the income tax mix here in the city of Athens and think that this is something that we can kick it down the road to somebody else. I cede my time.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the public, would anyone like to comment on this ordinance on the agenda at this moment of the income tax increase? Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Please give us your name and your address and whether you represent a group.
My name is Aaron Thomas, 28 Avon Place, and I am representing me, myself, and I today. So, I know I only have 3 minutes, but I want to kind of go back to a couple of things that has been mentioned tonight, especially when it comes down to increase of tax. I have watched multiple city council meetings and Treasurer Thomas saying we just don't have the money to do that. And I mean, some days I feel like Athens city is supporting Athens County more than it is, especially with things like the Orca. And I get it. We have to keep things going as a city that houses Ohio University. But when we talk about increasing a tax on residents and why we need to increase that tax because of healthcare has went up with city staff, I will say that my healthcare with the Unaffordable Healthcare Act at 45 years old is $158 a month with a $7,500 deductible. It's not just me, it's many other people that's paying their own health insurance in this town. So when we say we only have a $120 increase for the city tax, let's look at the 4 levies that just passed this year and last year and the last 5 years. And I look at my property tax has increased over $1,400. So let's take that increase of property taxes on top of city taxes. And I get it, the city needs to survive. I'm happy to see the street improvements. I'm happy to see things just moving forward with improving our city. But when you look at the census, this is real data. We are still one of the poorest areas in the entire state of Ohio. The average person in this area makes under $40,000 as a single person. As a couple, they make $62,000 a year. So we put someone that has a home in town, as we keep talking about affordable homes, the average home is selling for $300,000. Let's say they got a $6,000 a year property tax. Let's put some more taxes on top of them. Let's say they got to pay the unaffordable health care of $1,200 a month. How can somebody continue to live in this area? I have brought this up many times to Councilman Swank. We had a conversation this summer at the Far East Side neighborhood gathering. And my biggest fear, as somebody who came here in college, who stayed, started a business for 19 and a half years, continued to run the business, and I'm forced to leave the area to make a living because what I need to charge in order to pay my lifestyle of living, I cannot charge in this area. I have to travel. I can't be here on Mondays because I'm on the road Friday, Saturday, Sundays. I'm watching reruns on Facebook on Tuesdays of these dilemmas that's coming up. And it's not just me. We look at our aging group that's in this area. People who's getting retirement, getting VA benefits, they're not going to be taxed. But what about the people who's trying to start a family here?
Please continue if you'd like to finish your.
So I will finish on this. I love Athens. I commit to Athens. I have been diehard for Athens since I graduated. But I have to worry about as a person, and many people my age have to worry about how much longer can we live in an area that's becoming unaffordable. I mean, I get what we're paying for, but when we're paying taxes for places like Canal Winchester are paying, and people outside Lancaster and parts of Columbus and the suburbs, I mean, we're out taxing our community. And we can't expect people want to come here and stay here when they start looking at 30% of their income is going towards property taxes, income taxes, and not even health insurance. So I hope we do consider this. I know it's important that we need the funds. I wrote a letter, I get it. My biggest thing is, I'll leave on this, as we put these type of things on the ballot for levies and for income taxes, people prey on the student population to vote for these. These students vote yes on things that do not affect them because most of them leave. And then we're here to pay the burden. These levies pass, I know we need them, but how much more can I pay for my home before I'm forced to move out of the city or out of the county to stay here? It's important to think about that. And, I'm not here just to dress you all, but I need people at home to understand what they're voting on. You're voting yourself out of a home. How much more money can you pay before you got to move? So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
My name is Melina Miller. I live at 25 Graham Drive. I hardly know what to say or where to begin. There's so much to cover, and I don't want to touch upon some of the other things you're going to be talking about tonight. But I have to shadow Mr. Thomas here, although we are, I'm old enough to be probably his grandmother, actually. But, it's just ridiculous. Recently, after I campaigned all summer long and in the fall, worked the polls, I had to call Service Director Stone to make sure that West Union Street was going to be open, for us to work at the polls at Ohio Means Jobs, because there was no sight of that, nothing in sight for that to happen. But I'm a senior. I'm a senior on a limited income. There are many people on the Far East Side. And by the way, the Far East Side has taken the burden. Alan lives there. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas live there. I don't know of another city administrator or staff member who lives on the Far East Side. But we take the brunt of everything. We've taken the closure of Echoing Meadows. We've taken all the Metropolitan Housing Authority houses, the bulk of them, over the years, the integrative services, all these clients, and integrated them into our system. And we've increased. So that takes away the tax base, you know. So those folks are not, those homes are gone. They are never, those 7 or 8 homes in our area were never opened to the young couples. They were never made available as affordable housing to seniors, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, it was hard for me to vote for the levies. It was very difficult. And, you know, I've taught school here. I taught at Federal Hocking in 1971. I've taught at Hocking College. I've taught some at OU. It was very difficult for me to vote for those levies. It's against my nature to vote against them. But I mean, I had to call the auditor's office and the treasurer's office because I wanted to see, is there a way I can define how many of these parents who are sending their kids to school, Athens High, I've had to pay for that, the reconstruction of East Elementary, blah, 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 because I'm a property owner. Well, I love that idea that I have to, you know, help support the school systems. But come on, you know, I mean, and nobody could give me an idea of how many of these parents are in rental properties as opposed to owning their own homes. Now, I don't know what the breakdown is with landlords passing those expenses on to those parents, but I feel burdened by all of this. I feel overly burdened, and I'm sure a lot of the people that I go to WellWorks classes with, there are 35 of us in those exercise classes. They are, some of them, much older than I am, and they're single people, many of them living over in the Far East Side, hanging on to their houses. I don't know how they're doing it, you know. But they're not all paid for. Some of us still owe a mortgage on a home, you know. So I don't really know how to address some of this. But when I found out through the Independent, you know, let's not pretend we can put advertisements in the Messenger or the news and we're all going to be, as public members of this community, able to know about a meeting that you're having or something. That's ludicrous. It took the Independent to tell me that there was not enough oversight in this city about this $722,000 check, which is ludicrous. It is ludicrous. I come from the business world. That's where I come from, in California, having run and worked for really large businesses. There is always a check and balance system. There is always. Business people know this. And then I come and I work for 15 years for visiting nurses and hospice. Nonprofits and cities pretend that they don't have to have this run on the same tenets that businesses do. It's ludicrous. And $2.3 million stolen by an employee of the Metropolitan Housing Authority. It makes me gag. We'll never see that money back. It makes me gag. And I don't know what the solutions are. I appreciate all that you are looking into. There's been some real good comments from all of you tonight on the council about your independent research on these matters. But I'm telling you, and I hear from these people all the time because they're like me. They're seniors who are just hanging on by our fingernails, you know? My daughter would love for me to move back to California. I don't want to do that. I want to live on the Far East Side in my home. So please, you know, and just one more thing. You know, when West Union's closed, Stimson was closed. I mean, when we look at developing the streets and doing this street work and everything else, putting in sidewalks in front of O'Bleness Hospital and along the entire side of that side of the street, it's unnecessary. In berms, there is a sidewalk on the other side of the street, and that's where our people are generally walking. Same on Stimson. And these berms and these fancy, you know, planters and all this costs us a lot of concrete and a lot of money. And we did Stimson twice, if you'll remember, because something else occurred. So we just need better oversight, you know. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
19 East Carpenter Street, Brittany Anderson. As she was saying, like Echoing Meadows, I used to live there, and people with independent and disabilities, like, how is that affecting them when they live in the ICFs and whatever the other, there's up there where she lives, in one on Harner Road. I mean, how are they gonna afford this stuff? They're gonna have to, you know, is where Echoing Meadows is, but they kind of got to rehab facilities. So how are they gonna afford that when it's knows where it's going. How do you tell them? I'm like, even me, like, how are you gonna do things when disabilities, whatever happens? I mean, I'm trying to think how to even word this. I'm tired right now. It's been a hell of a week. But how would you afford it when you're disabled, you have a disability, and you can't like get around as much as we can, other people can, and things like that? How's that helping? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Megan Weber. I live at 10616 State Route 550, Athens, Ohio. Tonight, I want to address both the tax increase as well as the $720,000 that we were scammed out of. Athens County, as we know, is one of the poorest counties in the entire country. Many families here are already struggling, living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to afford food, housing, and basic necessities. While some people might have the ability to leave, if they get priced out of this area, the most vulnerable among us are not able to. I myself am privileged enough that if I need to, I can leave. But I work for the libraries, and I see the most vulnerable among us walk into my doors every single day. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse. This is not just about affordability, it's about survival. A tax increase for people already stretched to their limits could lead to homelessness, hunger, and even death. These are not abstract possibilities. These are things that are happening to people in our community right now. And the fact that Athens County is a county that I thought was progressive, it really makes me pause when I see the way that we are treating our homeless population here, especially with the sale of the Ohio Means Jobs building. Where are those homeless people going to go? I would like to know. I would like to have an answer to that as well. But when we are being asked for more and more and more, and yet I'm sitting here and I'm not even being told what money is going to be used for, and yet we have lost over $700,000 for the city of Athens, maybe you are correct, and this is not the time to ask the people of Athens for more money. What is being done to recover the money? I would like to know what safeguards are being put in place. Once again, what can be done so that this is not going to happen again? It is ridiculous that it happened in the first place. The people of Athens are hardworking, resilient, and proud of our community. But we cannot be expected to shoulder the burden and also trust the city to do what is in our best interest if things like this are going to happen. Because I think you have lost the trust of the people of Athens. And I think that needs to be restored before you put something on the ballot and you ask us for more money personally. Thank you for your time. And I just urge you to consider what was being said here tonight. And this will not be my last city council meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Koya Bryant, and I'm here to represent the business community. I can tell you that Athens is heavily taxed. My business is Cool Digs. I routinely hear from customers that if they have a big purchase to make, they might drive out of our community because even our sales tax is higher than right up the road. And I think that sometimes this money goes towards things that don't really benefit the majority of our community. And I think that enough of our community has needs right now that are being overlooked, that maybe you guys should table the idea that Ohio or that Athens needs to burden to carry more tax burden right now. There's way more than 6 businesses gone. There's a lot of businesses going out of business, even over where Alan Swank lives. We have Soul going out of business. We just lost Import House. We're about to lose the hardware store. And even businesses that aren't here yet aren't coming. I'm hearing from the county commissioners that Keynes has pulled out of the touted Lostro project, that we don't actually know. We don't have a plan for Lostro that's getting all of these special privileges. Maybe do something about that. Maybe work with the money that we do have and explain to the people where that's going. Maybe lower the sales tax so that our businesses can compete with the sales tax of the rest of the state. All the money gets funneled to the image of OU. Well, everybody sees through that mirage. That's all I have to say about this subject. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public to comment on the income tax increase for the ballot? Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of this ordinance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 112-24 is an ordinance authorizing the auditor to reduce 2024 year-end appropriations, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an ordinance that we pass at the end of every year, allowing the auditor to make certain reductions that are necessary to keep the balance before the end of the year. Essentially, we're doing bookkeeping.
Thank you, Member Reisner.
Is there a motion?
Is there a motion?
I thought I made a motion. I don't know. I'm so tired right now. I don't know what's going on.
To try again.
Fill me in. I'd like to make a motion to adopt this damn thing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Law Director Eliason?
No.
Mayor? Members of the public? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 130-24 is an ordinance authorizing a water line replacement on Factory Street, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Crowell. I'd like to move that we adopt ordinance 130-24.
Second.
Thank you. This was introduced at committee and has been read now for the third time as an ordinance authorizing a water line replacement project on Factory Street. I will read this, the section 1 pertinent information. The Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $222,000 from the 2025 budget Water Fund Maintenance 740.635 Transaction Class 500 for said water line replacement on Factory Street. I'd like to move that we adopt ordinance 130-24.
Second.
I think we had a.
Thank you. We already had a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from City
I
Council
remember that
members?
one.
City Council members, comments or questions? Law Director Eliason, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 132-24 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title III, Administrative Provisions, Chapter 3.07, Administrative Departments, Boards and Commissions, Section 3.07.01, City Planning Commission, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
132-24 is very, very simple. What it does, it brings our code into not compliance. It makes it consistent with the Ohio Revised Code. Specifically, it talks about the membership and the distribution of those members, where the City Safety Service Director and 2 citizens of the municipal corporation and 1 public member is established. The public members appointed under this section need not be residents of the municipal corporation, but shall be residents of the county in which the municipal corporation is located or a township that is adjacent to the county. Again, this simply brings our code in line with the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. President, I would move that council pass O-132-24.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from city council members? Director Eliason? Mayor?
I do have a comment. That comment pertains to both this ordinance and the two following ordinances, to where the language that's inserted is basically addressing reappointments because the code is currently silent to reappointments. And I understand council's intent was because of the Board of Zoning Appeals reappointment of an individual. I would contend that if you read closely within the ORC, it does speak to if someone does something that puts the city in some form of jeopardy or is in violation of what their responsibility is as a Board of Zoning Appeals member, that a board can be put together to have investigate whether or not that individual be removed. That's kind of where this comes from. This is where the next ordinance comes from. I find it interesting that it remains silent when it comes to the Athens Municipal Arts Commission, the Commission on Disabilities, as well, and other commissions that I have the ability to appoint people to with council's approval, but it remains silent when it comes to reappointments. The comment came up with the BZA issue, and that is that only exemplary people should be serving on city boards or commissions. I'd be interested as to what the rubric is to identify exemplary people to serve on our boards and commissions. I'm also struggling with where I'm going to budget $2,000 for each individual that gets appointed the first time to do a thorough background investigation on that individual so that this doesn't happen again in the future based upon something that would alarm an appointment or a reappointment by council based upon something about an individual that is outside the duties and responsibilities of serving as a member or any actions while serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Planning Commission, or on the Shade Tree Commission. So I'm curious as to what the rubric will look like, Council, when it comes to exemplary people being the only ones who will be able to serve on boards and commissions, or at least on these three.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any comments from the public on this issue?
My name is Aaron Thomas, 28 Avon Place, Athens, Ohio. So just to add on to what the mayor said, I am a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals for I can't think how long now, probably going on 9 years, 6 years or so as an alternate, 3 years as a full serving board member. But these are appointed volunteer, non-paid positions from community members, and I like to feel everybody who sits on these boards are respectable community members. But I feel like this is kind of singling out what happened to the BZA, and I hope that this will roll on to every other appointed position moving forward if this is passed, not just because of the Board of Zoning Appeals and the issue that happened last month with one of our members. So speaking on my behalf, but I am a part of this committee that the mayor just mentioned. So,
Thank you. Any other audience members? We have a motion and a second for approval of 132-24. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 133-24 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 23 Zoning Code, Chapter 23.07 Board of Zoning Appeals, Section 23.07.01, appointment, introduced by Councilmember Swain.
Thank you, President Crowe. 13324 deals with the Board of Zoning Appeals. It's a rather simple amendment. 23.07.01, appointment. The BZA shall consist of 5 members who are electors of the city reappointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the council for staggered terms of 3 years. Mr. President, I would move that council pass 13324.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from city council members? Member McCary.
Thank you. I appreciated the mayor's comments a moment ago and just wanted to clarify that although I recall the points about potentially having board and commission members be exemplary in their experience and what they bring, I don't see that in the legislation, and I want to confirm that we are not doing background checks or creating a definition for exemplary performance.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Member
To
Swank.
answer Member McCary, no, this specifically addresses a point brought up by the law director when we had this conversation 2 months ago, that the current code is silent to the issue of reappointment, and this just addresses that silence.
Thank you, Member Swank. Other council members? Law Director Lassen? Mayor Patterson? Members of the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of ordinance 133-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 134-24 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 33, Shade Tree Commission, Section 33.01.01A2, Commission Membership, introduced by Councilmember Swain.
Thank you, President Crowe. 13424 is very similar to the previous ordinance. I will again read, all members appointed / reappointed by the mayor with the approval of council shall serve 3-year terms. Again, this addresses the absence of the word reappointment in the previous version of our city code. I would move that the council pass 13424.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from city council members? Law Director Lassen?
No.
Mayor Patterson? Members of the public? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 135-24 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Local 24032, concerning wages and working conditions, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 135-24.
Second.
This is our union negotiated contract with our code office. The title has pretty much said everything that needs to be said. I'll just add that the effective date of the terms of said agreement is October 5, 2024 through October 5, 2027. Ordinances or resolutions inconsistent with the terms of the attached agreement are hereby repealed. The attached agreement is 42 pages long, and I'll be happy to read it if you want to stick around tonight.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from city council members? Law Director Lassen, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 136-24 is an ordinance amending the 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23 and authorizing an interfund transfer, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to clear a point of procedure. I believe we have to do a suspension of the rules on this ordinance, or does it wait until the new year?
We are able to go into the new year for these ordinances. I do not know what the auditor's office has requested.
This is
or
a 24.
Oh, it's a 2024 expense. So I would think that a suspension of the rules would be necessary, Member Reisner.
Very well, then I will make a motion that we suspend the rules for 136-24.
Second.
Reasons being what our president just stated.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules for 136-24. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules are suspended. Member Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me to read it, and then I'll make a motion. The 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $65,000 to DUI Fund 237, transaction code 600, to transfer and increase the total appropriations by said amount. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 136-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from city council members? Law Director Eliason, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 137-24 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 116-24 to increase non-union compensation for the Assistant Law Director and Prosecutor, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the ordinance that we discussed in committee an hour and a half ago. Allow me to read the pertinent sections, then I'll make a motion. In accordance with Section 1 of Ordinance 116-24, City Council does hereby authorize a general hourly pay increase effective the first pay period in 2025 with retroactive pay for the following positions: Assistant Law Director, pay grade 11 from $39.37 to $42.94, and Prosecutor, currently filled position, pay grade 10 from $36.85 to $39.39. I'd like to make a motion that we
Oh,
adopt.
no, we don't need that. We don't need a motion.
Been read for the first time, Mayor.
Read for the first time.
Member
Very well.
Reisner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on this ordinance? Yes, Member Swank.
Two quick questions for the law director. Is the assistant law director the position you're trying to fill?
No.
No.
It's a prosecutor position. We had a position in pay grade 11 that was chief city prosecutor, and that position departed 2 months ago. And the pay that they were receiving was in the range of the $42.94 an hour. The person who's going to be going into the assistant law director position works the job 3/4 time. So the person who was in the position of chief city prosecutor was full-time. So there's a 25% savings there in not paying the position full-time. And then the prosecutor position went from 9 to 10, and I'm asking for an increase in the hourly rate to $39.39, and that gives me the opportunity to make the offer to the new person coming in, so that position who's been here, the person in that position who's been here for several years, will make more than the new person coming in.
So would it help us to pass this tonight for you to offer that position? It has no bearing on that?
No.
Okay.
And the pay grades have already moved, and I can bring in the new person 25% through the pay grade without coming to council.
Okay.
And so, no, there's no reason.
Okay, yeah, just want to make sure.
Okay.
Didn't want to hold up your
I appreciate
hiring
that.
process.
No, you will not, and I do appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions on this ordinance? Anything to add, Law Director Eliason? Mayor Patterson, anything to add? Members of the public? Thank you. 137-24 has been read for the first time. We now move on to a resolution for third reading. Resolution 10-24 is a resolution to place the issue of increasing the city income tax by 0.03%, 0.30%, per annum beginning January 1, 2026, on the ballot at the next primary election on May 6, 2025, and directing the Board of Elections of Athens County to conduct the election, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 10-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions on this resolution? Member McCary.
I appreciate that, President Crowell. And just following up on our earlier conversation, I can be certain that there will be a lot of public interest in this topic moving forward. And I'm just curious again about the timeline for when we might, whether it be in conjunction with the Women League of Voters or of our own accord, when we might be able to formally, outside of a council meeting setting, begin to host listening sessions or some sort of forum on this topic. Or more directly, would we look to the mayor to take point on that, or will it be council?
I don't think it'll be council as a body. I think individual council people, whenever the decision is made by that individual council person, I think once it gets certified to be on the ballot, that would be the time that maybe some comments could be made either way, for or against.
And perhaps in the meantime, citizens can just be reminded that they can direct inquiries, suggestions to council members or to the mayor. And Law Director, could you just remind us when that certification is likely to happen?
It has to be sent to, well, there are several different things that have to happen. It has to be 90 days before the election, and we'll get a copy of the language, approve the language, and then the Board of Elections will make the decision as to whether or not the language is sufficient for the ballot. That's also reviewed. The language is also reviewed by the state.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this? Clerk Walker, did we? On the resolution, okay. All those in favor of approving ordinance 10-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
The resolution is approved. We now move on to announcements and other business. Is there a motion to remove an item from the table?
Mr. President, I would move that council remove 06424 from the table.
We have a motion to remove 64-24 from the table. Any questions or comments on this motion?
Just to explain what this is, oh wait, oh, never mind, nope, not there yet.
All those in favor of removing 64-24? Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
All those in favor of removing 64-24 from the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the item is removed from the table. Member Swank.
Mr. President, I would move the council passes 06424 because it is at third reading.
Second.
The reasoning behind this is a long, complicated story that I'll make very, very short. The applicant originally asked for use of the right-of-way for parking of vehicles. This is a Donwood Hyundai. Parking of vehicles in the right-of-way and lights. Well, the lights are already in the right-of-way. The issue with the parking of vehicles in the right-of-way is it impeded drivers' vision exiting Grand Park onto East State Street. So we have worked with several of the general managers there. They finished off the parking lot. The lights are already there. As long as we can continue compliance, it shouldn't be a problem. And if the cars do begin to creep back out there, that's handled through parking enforcement. But as of today, everything's kosher in that lot.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve 64-24. Any additional comments or questions from council members? Law Director Eliason, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ordinance the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. May I have motions to accept the September, October, and November financial reports?
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to accept September, October, November financial reports. Any comments or questions on this motion? Law Director Eliason, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The financial reports are accepted. And I have a motion to accept the August, September, and October credit card transactions.
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to approve the credit card transactions. Are there any comments or questions on the credit card transactions from these months? Law Director Eliason, Mayor Patterson, members of the public. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is approved. The credit card transactions are accepted. We now move on to an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. Please come forward and state your name and your address, and whether you represent a group. You will have 3 minutes, Brittany.
Hi, I just have a question. Like when they do the like.
Tell us your name and your address. Sorry, got to go through the.
19 East Carpenter Street. Doing myself. I just have a question. When they do pavement, like or the bricks, it's hard to walk on when you have like sandals that are wet. I fell almost twice today, face planted. I think they need to either pave the road or put the concrete, but like those bricks up like CVS and them. Every time I go in there, it's wet. I fall almost to the ground. It doesn't help when it has a hole in the shoe and you got duct tape, but I mean, it's something needs to be done with the bricks too. I mean, I've even slipped across the road going today across the Family Dollar, and something's got to give. I would say that.
Thank you.
My name is Aaron Thomas, 28 Avon Place. I want to thank you all so much. It is a very thankless job of what you all do. So I do want to thank you all for giving your time to the community of Athens to be here every week to go over things that will better our community. You know, as a community member, I respect all y'all decisions, and I promise to show up more than twice a year next year. So be looking for me at least once a month in 2025. But one of my biggest concerns I do want to address is, you know, even though I try to watch the meetings every week via Facebook, you know, one thing that's not discussed a lot is our cybersecurity and what we're doing to protect ourselves as a city, as a community. You know, the $700,000 was minimum compared to what some cities are being held for as ransom. If you follow the Columbus News right now, you see how much stuff is going on with the city of Columbus. And I hope as we look into this tax increase that some of these funds that could come will be directed towards cybersecurity and protecting our data as a city, as a community. But if you all want to research, this is a nice small town in upstate New York that was held under cyber attack for almost 6 months, a year and a half ago. And they took out all their 911 systems, their judicial systems, their community computers, everything for probably a few $1 million worth of threats. So I just hope if we're looking to allocate some of these funds that we're looking at for next year, that some of it is put towards protecting our data and making sure we don't lose any more money to suspicious emails or cybersecurity attacks. But once again, thank you all for what you do, and I will be here at least 12 times in 2025. All right, thanks.
Wrote it down.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We appreciate your participation, both on commissions as well as here in the city. Look forward to seeing you next year, and I'll just let you know that I watched your cruise video, and I know where I want to be next year, so we could do a swap. Any other members of the public would like to address a topic not covered on the agenda? Sure. Can't guarantee you'll get an answer, but you're welcome to ask a question.
Melina Miller, 25 Graham Drive. I may have missed this in my inability to keep up with the sparse number of publications like the Messenger and the News. But, you know, I spend a lot of time going from the east side to the west side. As many of you know, it's not always particularly easy to get there. And with all the work that's been done on West Union, it's been very, very challenging. It's been so challenging for those businesses, as everybody's previously discussed. But I just wondered when the proposed roundabout on 682 is coming into being. Is that still going to happen? And if so, what kinds of mitigation is being done about that? Because I can just see such serious future problems with more traffic, you know, and business situations. Is that really happening, and when is it happening?
Would anyone like to address that? Mayor, would you like to answer
I
that?
can speak to it.
Please, thank you.
For sure. 2026. And much like the Richland Avenue roundabout and the Stimson Avenue roundabout traffic was maintained in both directions when putting the roundabout in, and that's the plan for the 682-56 roundabout.
Well, along that line then, I would just like to suggest, the Richland Avenue roundabout has been there for several years now, at the bottom of the ridges. And I thought that the purpose in building that little underground tunnel was for pedestrians and bicyclists and what have you. But as long as you continue to encourage them to walk around there with the lines that are designated for pedestrians and what have you, they can be retrained, I think we've been very fortunate that we have not had a serious accident with a pedestrian or bicyclist. And you may not know this, but 2 years ago, I was hit from behind on our bicycle path by a high-speed bicyclist who'd already traveled 45 miles from Parkersburg, hit me from behind, never saw him coming, didn't give any notice he was coming, and threw me about 30 feet in the air. It was a very expensive and very frightening experience. I don't gratefully remember anything from the accident because it was a concussive thing. But, so I'm very concerned about the marriage of all of us out there, pedestrians, dog walkers, and cyclists and what have you. And every time I come to that roundabout, I see, cars having to stop for pedestrians. So I would suggest if we could take and paint over and sort of retrain students and everybody else to use that tunnel, just a suggestion.
President Crowd,
Member Swank?
could I add something?
Sure.
Elena, I brought that topic up last week and basically was shot down. So my suggestion would be that you address those comments to the Pedestrian and Accessibility Task Force. Okay. Thank you.
I would also like to thank you guys. I'd like to thank you for letting us have our uptown gathering in October. Helped us make rent that month. So, but not much has changed for Cool Digs.
Ms. Bryant, remind us of your name and your address.
Yeah,
Thank you.
My name is Sarakoya Bryant. My company is Cool Digs. We're at 596 East State Street. We have a gallery next to the Lostro project uptown at 13 West Union. When I was here in October, Councilman Swank showed some pictures of my blocked building. My building is essentially still blocked. The sidewalk all is blocked. So I think, here we go. Here's a picture of what's going on right now. You can see this yellow area that's highlighted. That's where their porta-johns and the entrance to the Lostro is, and that's the only spot on the sidewalk on our side of the road that has been constructed. Here's another picture of the monstrosity, which is Lostro next to our building. There's no walkway, there's no thoroughfare, there's no access to real businesses that currently generate money for this city and are closing. Here is their idea of an accessible walkway. Just go on the other side of the street so that then my customers have to jaywalk and cross traffic to get to my business. So again, there's the front. This is the only place, small area of the sidewalk complete for their porta-johns and entrance to their building. The other problem I'm having is that I can't get any answers from the administration. These guys have had sidewalk permit after sidewalk permit, and the sidewalk permits keep coming. They're permitted to camp on the sidewalk. They're permitted to obstruct the right-of-way to the decimation of people's lives and livelihood. So we mentioned earlier businesses going out of business, loss of revenue in this community. We lost Grub and Go, direct result of this project. We lost. Now Neil Jack Florist on the other side of my business at 15 West Union is going out of business, okay? For promises from Lostro. So I have had a retail business in this town since 2011. I brought my profit loss statement. So this year we have paid Cool Digs $238,592 in wages to our community. Real people's lives, real wages, okay? And involved in that is over $24,000 in tax. So that's income tax, stuff you guys are wanting to raise. I think that if you guys can't get better treatment of small businesses in this community from administration, you're not going to have any income generating, because it's unfair, it's unreasonable that we should be shut down because this project is allowed to camp on the sidewalk. Okay, so we have laws on the books against blocking the sidewalk. Even in our Athens City Code and our nuisance law, no person upon being notified shall without lawful authority obstruct pedestrian travel on a sidewalk within a municipality. So I've reached out to everybody I can reach out to, including Jay Edwards. I talked to Jay Edwards, our state representative, last week and again this afternoon. And guess who hasn't called him back about the Lostro project? Andy Stone or Andrew Cheeky. Last time I was here, we were discussing the fact that Andrew Cheeky was blocking my business. All I want is my business to not be blocked and my commerce to not be interrupted. In the 13 years I've collected sales tax in this town, I have collected more money than just got lost by this administration. It's real money. It's real lives. We deserve real answers. In the meantime, while I'm not getting answers from anyone, they're having a meeting. You guys' committee for the historical preservation was meeting on the 18th of November, and Bill Walker and Richard Vedder discussed that a lot of work's happening inside the Lostro. Yeah, work's happening inside while they camp out there. It's one thing to get a permit to construct a new sidewalk. It is another thing to continually block the thoroughfare and do nothing. And that's what Lostro is doing. That's what's happening right now. My business goes under, you're going to have 10 more people on unemployment in this town. I need answers. And I need a walkway on our side of the road. Any city would construct a walkway and would not just sit and let business after business die. I contacted our county commissioner last week. He reached out to 2 of you and was told the same story. The administration doesn't care about me because I pointed out that the Andrew Cheeky wasn't following the correct procedure. Everyone's just putting me off. Both of you said that. And you guys know which ones of you were contacted, so I don't need to mention names. And you know what was said. And I'm not putting up with it. This is actionable behavior. I don't deserve any of it. I want to be seen. I want my business to be open. I want the same things that anyone else here does. And I expect equal treatment under the law. You cannot obstruct the sidewalk constantly to the bane of everyone else. It is not allowed. It needs to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. I will read a response that I received from Mr. Cheeky. Okay. As for the continuing claim that I unilaterally and unauthorizedly allowed certain special event street closures, I would respectfully request that this be addressed. It has been an ongoing claim made publicly, and it is not true in any way. It has been brought up in City Council and in the news media. I sent them the email chains and supporting information, and yet the claim persists. Despite this, I continued to work with them and treated them no different with their own event, even after it became obvious that they misrepresented to City Council the event closure that they requested. On March 20, while I was on FMLA leave, there was a request about changing the DORA days, which is on the ordinance, to include additional dates. This was reviewed, determined to be in the authority of the SSD, the Service Safety Director, and approved by Service Safety Director Stone on March 27th. This was the first email in the public records packet that she received, Ms. Bryant received. I didn't unilaterally authorize anything. I wasn't working at the time. And it was reviewed for authority and approved by the SSD. This is for the June 8 and July 18 event dates. I would add that I wrote the ordinance language for City Council's convenience and would know the wording and intent as the author of it. The event on September 21 had to be moved to September 7. This is clearly outlined in the ordinance as allowable and was not an added date as she claims. I generally do the maintenance of traffic plans, work with the organizers to make sure they have what they need from us, and ensure that we have staff coverage for such events. We appreciate you being here, Ms. Bryant.
Okay, so I never got a direct response from Ms. Eliason about whether or not Andrew had authority to add dates. Or if
So no dates were added.
Well, dates were added, though.
Okay. Thank you.
President Crowell, could I add something here?
Member
Since
Swank?
we're on, since you've opened this can of worms. The original DORA days were 5/17, 5/31, 6/28, and 7/12. A request was made on March 20th, and the request is the following. The union and Jackie O's approached me about being included in the DORA days street closures since they were initially not part of the original discussions, I believe. They are interested in closing Union from Court Street to Congress on June 8th and July 18th. Request was to add DORA days. The ordinance specifically reads, and I quote, "The Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to close streets in the uptown area for special events during the 2024 calendar year to change requested dates or cancel events. Unless a DORA day on 5/17, 5/31, 6/28, or 7/12 was changed to 6/8 or 7/18, those dates were added, not changed, and therefore are not in the spirit of the ordinance that this council approved. Furthermore, I'd like to ask Sarah Koya, what would happen if that sidewalk's not open for another 60 to 80 days?
You're going to shut down another business. All three of them on that side of the road will have closed.
Because as I understand it, this is Andrew Chicky speaking, we are looking at between 60 and 80 days before the sidewalk will be fully open again.
Well, you need to put up an alternative walkway, which is one of those caged things where people can walk on that side of the road. That's
And what the
cities
contractor
do.
is saying, just as a brief response follow-up, we will be reviewing some of the on-site tomorrow and will begin working on a solution for temporary access to the Union Street sidewalk when possible. As necessary, we will also work with you as best as possible to accommodate some form of pedestrian access to the site. That doesn't sound too definitive to me.
No, and every month I'm strung along. You know, I've been told since September that it's just a little bit more time. You know, they've had permit after permit expire. The last one expired on Sunday, yesterday. They have no sidewalk closure permit, unless, of course, the safety office just gives them a new permit, like they do every time.
It was approved.
So, Representative Swank, you seem to have that ordinance.
Yeah.
So if you can read the very bottom of that ordinance, it does say that it's only applicable to these applications, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So maybe that's why I didn't get a response from the law director about whether or not the city administration can just shut down the roads whenever they decide to without the approval from council. Because the answer is no, and the behavior was yes. And it's cover up after cover up. Just admit it. That's what was happening. It has to stop. None of the uptown businesses benefit from these beer parties. The only people that benefit are the breweries. Okay, so let's get that straight too. Everybody else shuts down. They can't, and we don't have the parking for any of this, by the way. Yes.
So, I mean, I've been in other cities where when there's construction like this, they go out into the road and, as you described, cage off an area, which, I mean, it would be an inconvenience for the drivers, but it seems like it's not unreasonable to ask.
It's not, it's required even, Yeah, I've missed the homecoming, I missed all the Halloween sales, I'm missing Christmas, and every time I'm told it's just a little bit longer. No one can plan their business. When month to month, the story changes. I'm being displaced by this construction. Grub and Go was displaced. Neil Florist is being displaced.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant.
Where's the money for that?
City administration is working on solutions to these problems. They are concerned about.
When?
They are.
How many small businesses close before the bureaucracy catches up to the real hardships?
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to address council on any issue not on the agenda?
Could I just respond to this very, very briefly?
Come to the podium.
My name's Melina Miller, 25 Graham Drive. I've been a customer of Cool Digs for many, many years. Alan and I know about this business because it's been at the end of Euclid for many, many years. I've been purchasing a lot of my yard goods rather than go to White's Mill and get the big bags of everything I need, mulch and so forth. And I have twice in the last 2 or 3 months been uptown to go and see this new business, and I couldn't get there. I mean, I just simply couldn't get there. There was no place to park. I was on the other side of the street trying to find parking. It was impossible to maneuver through all this barrage of obstruction, really, truly obstructive, behavior. And I also shop a lot uptown at Little Professor. It was really difficult to get past all this construction on the corner of this building, this proposed whatever businesses are going in there. And so, once I've been in the new Cool Digs location up there, one day I was actually, but I've tried several times, and I'm going to be going out of town. I was going to buy some things there for my grandchildren and so forth, and it's just been very difficult. And I think it's pretty unfair, I really do. I mean, I think that this councilwoman's suggestion is really something that needs to be taken into concern and done pretty quickly. I don't think it's fair to expect her business or anybody else's to wait another 60 to 80 days. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. I appreciate that. I want to caution for anyone listening at home or watching these afterwards that I've been in 3 Union Street businesses in that block in the past 5 days. I've been in Little Professor. I've been in Court Street Coffee. I've parked in the downtown area. I don't want anybody to think they can't come downtown and park and go to businesses. I'll just say anecdotally that I've been to many businesses in the past 6 days. So I apologize. I'm sorry that anybody has trouble, but these businesses are open. Please do come and support our local businesses. Thank you. Any other members of the public who'd like to speak? I would take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned at 8:58 p.m. Thank you.
Forest counties in the entire 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 Forest co Forest counties in the entire poorest counties